Hey everyone, Jennifer Lee Chan here from NBC Sports Bay Area. I am in LA for those of you don't know, but I'm pretty far away from the fires, but different today, whereas the skies were kind of blue for the last I don't know, maybe a week or so, since they were pretty strong near the Palisades and kind of Getty Villa and all of that, kind of up the coast. It's gotten worse again today. And I think another fire broke out. The I-5 is closed, and the skies outside are very brown again. So, just a little prayer for everybody that's been affected by the fires more directly. Obviously, air quality is not great down here in Southern California. And I know that I remember back in 2020 when it was everybody locked up at home and the skies were so brown up in Northern California. So, um, hopefully, none of you are seriously affected by it, but yeah, just unfortunate. And I was in Maui over the weekend and kind of drove near Lahaina. So I have my Love for Lahaina shirt on, and it's been a while since they had the fire in Lahaina, but very little growth, very little rebuilding has happened. There are some things that are kind of popping up, but ultimately Lahaina is still closed off to even through traffic. There are kind of some spots on the peripheral edges. I think the old Lahaina luau is still going on. The cannery is still open if you're familiar with Lahaina at all. Um, but just, fires are so devastating and so scary. So hopefully they are able to eventually rebuild. It's always harder for people to rebuild in Hawaii just because the supplies and everything have to get shipped over. So it's an incredibly long process for everybody involved. So outside of that, my little PSA to say a prayer for those affected by the wildfires, and hopefully we get some rain soon. But heavy winds, 30 to 40 mile an hour winds here in Southern California. Um, Praying for a little rain, pray for a little moisture, a little bit of rain. All right, so it is Wednesday, and earlier this morning, Jacksonville Jags decided to let Trent Baalke go. So they have relieved former GM of the 49ers, has been with the Jags for a little while now, relieved him of his general manager duties, and he is now unemployed. It's a fascinating, uh, I guess, I don't know S show over in Jacksonville who I think they don't know what they're doing. Um, as that's what it looks like. I'm not, you know, I don't know Shad Khan and the ownership over there, but it just appears like they are all over the place. For them to have waited until now to relieve Trent Baalke of his duties is so bizarre. Obviously, there have been some head coach candidates that have come in and said, hey, yeah, if you're going to hire me, that's not the general manager I'd like to work with. And I mean, I was shocked when they kept him, when they fired Doug Peterson and kept Trent Baalke. I mean, it seemed like he was safe for a while. So this whole move is shocking and surprising. I thought it would have happened. If it was going to happen, I thought it would have happened weeks ago when they let Doug Peterson go. But it is today, January 22nd. And as far as what that means for who they have lined up for interviews, it just depends on who they get in and what they've said. So Robert Saleh goes in for his second interview on Friday for the head coaching position with the Jaguars. And it appears to be that he could be the favorite. It looks like, if, and I believe if he's offered the head coaching job, he will take it, and the 49ers will have to look elsewhere for their defensive coordinator. Now, personally, I would think it would be why would you go work for an organization that appears to not know what they're doing? I mean, it just seems like chaos over there. Yes, there are some good pieces, some good players. He could bring in a lot of um, his own coordinators that could make, it a better organization. I think some head coaches have the belief that they can lift a bad organization up to a winning standard. And some coaches are able to do that. But generally, when you have an ownership group or owner who just is not in line with normal procedures of the NFL, it's fighting an uphill battle. But looking at how many jobs there are only 32 in the world of being a head coach for an NFL team. And if he's offered a lot of money, he could spend 2 years at the Jaguars and be set for life and not have to worry about it. For some guys, I think the money is more of an incentive and the ego and the title, it's more appealing than saying, hey, I'd rather go be the defensive coordinator of the 49ers, not have to worry about my job being in jeopardy. Granted, of course, he's going to work as hard as possible to make sure that they do win, but the pressure is less. Coordinator positions are always less pressure, of course, than a head coaching job. I know you all know that. So, I does Trent Baalke leaving make it more attractive for Robert Saleh? Maybe. Uh, does it make it more attractive for other candidates? Could be. So I think it does make the Jaguars' job more attractive, but how much it affects Robert Saleh and whether he's going to, you know, be the guy, we'll see. Now, Trent Baalke. Um, Last year was my 11th season covering the 49ers. And so 4 of the years I was covering the Niners, Trent Baalke was there. And he did not say my first name once. Not that I expect anyone to go, hey, Jennifer, how are you doing today? But after 4 years, you'd think, there would be some sort of ability to have small talk or some sort of something. Not once in 4 years did Trent Baalke ever say my name. And I've seen him subsequently at owners' meetings, at league meetings, in press boxes when the Niners have played the Jaguars. I've been on the field when he's walked by and I'm with Matt. Now, with Matt, he has had conversations, small talk, on the field, but um, totally different MO than John Lynch. Now, John Lynch, the second day I met him, Jennifer, how are you doing? How are you doing? Are things going well? And I'm not saying that that is the most important aspect of a general manager, but I think the fact that John Lynch can have social relationships with other GMs, with other coaches. He's been in the broadcast booth, so he knows how to grow relationships. That, as a general manager, facilitates deals getting done. That helps facilitate deals like, and I know it didn't necessarily work out with Chase Young, but it does help when they're calling over to the Washington Commanders and saying, hey, we need a pass rusher, send Chase Young over. It helps with Christian McCaffrey coming over in the middle of the season, turning into Offensive Player of the Year in 2023. So the fact that John Lynch is able to work the phone lines and have these relationships with all these GMs, and being a broadcaster is probably one of the better positions for him to have had being in, to go into being a general manager because he has all the relationships that he's built up through being a broadcaster. So he would go into the facility, meet with the coach, meet with the GM every week before the game he was covering. And so for him to be able to do that for several years, he's got these relationships. And then as a former player, he's got those relationships. So, it makes a guy like John Lynch, yes, he didn't have any experience as a GM, but the way the 49ers did it was one of the best ways to be able to do it, right? So John Lynch goes in as general manager. He's the figurehead on the scouting side of the ball. And they bring in guys, or they have guys like Martin Mayhew, Rand Carthon, Adam Peters. I mean, Adam Peters is probably going to be GM of the year, I would think. I mean, what he's done in 1 year, the Washington Commanders have been kind of the laughing stock of the league you know, of the NFC. And you look at them now and how he's put together the team. And yes, it is new ownership and, all those things, but the momentum that the Washington Commanders have. And, I have a ton of respect for the Commanders. And I think, I would love to see them in the Super Bowl. I mean, they're the team that has just been, the laughing stock. And to have them have the season that they're having, is fantastic. I think I would love to see the Bills and the Commanders complete East Coast Super Bowl in New Orleans, where it snowed yesterday. Crazy. We've got crazy weather everywhere. So, um, I do think that Trent Baalke out makes the job definitely more appealing to candidates, but yeah, I don't know if what's going to happen there. Um, Jacksonville needs a head coach. They need a whole coaching staff. So, as far as the Niners go, um, could they, if Robert Saleh does take that head coaching job, does Brandon Staley move to defensive coordinator? Maybe. But it's so weird. Chargers fired Brandon Staley on December 15th in 2023. The 49ers didn't add him to their staff until March. So they had the opportunity to hire him as their defensive coordinator. Um, Nick Sorensen was, yeah, hired in March. And so they had their shot. They had their shot at bringing in Brandon Staley. Maybe it was because having a guy outside like Steve Wilkes didn't work for them, so they wanted to go internal. And Kyle Shanahan likes to promote within. So like we've seen it before where it was um D'Amico Ryan's working his way up. It was different guys going through being assistants to being bigger roles. So uh Pete Carroll, I don't know. They haven't interviewed him. He's 73 years old. He could end up being the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Um, I don't know. Um, Pete Carroll would be interesting, but I don't know from what I have experienced with Pete Carroll. And granted, I've never covered him one on one, and he may be different now that he's 73 versus when he was in his 50s as a head coach of USC. But I don't know that his ego and need for control or what he's used to it to be able to take a step back and be a defense coordinator. I think he'd be a fantastic defense coordinator, but I remember when it was Norm Chow as the offensive coordinator and Pete Carroll as the head coach of USC. And Norm Chow, it was Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, Lendale White, Mike Williams. I mean, like they had a star-studded offense, but also Norm Chow was dialing it up on the offense. And Norm Chow started to get more and more attention, and people were talking about him instead of Pete Carroll. And it didn't necessarily go over well with Pete Carroll that Norm Chow was getting all that attention. So Norm Chow was kind of eased out, and Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian were eased in as offensive coordinators. So I don't know from looking at that Pete Carroll would want to take a backseat to Kyle Shanahan, who is a little bit younger, hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. Pete Carroll has. Just don't think the dynamics in that work. As far as Robert Saleh, absolutely think it would work. Just don't know whether he's going to get the head coaching job. And if he does get offered it, I think he takes it. So if I hear any other news about any other candidates that the 49ers are interested in, I will post it here. But until then, good night, good afternoon. Pray for rain for Southern California. All right, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Talk to you soon.